Welcome to the first sewing marathon of 2025. I am so excited to do this marathon, and actually I'm so excited for all the marathons we have planned. We have been working behind the scenes to come up with a great schedule of patterns and marathons for this year, and I think all of them are just going to be amazing. For the first marathon, we are going to be sewing up the pattern Alice. This is from the designer Lacus. I have so many patterns from this designer. As a matter of fact, I have a traditional tutorial on this very pattern on my channel already. I did the wristlet version, and this one I'm going to do the wallet version, and I'm going to try to make this the happiest, quirkiest wallet ever. The designer does have this pattern on discount now, and honestly the price was already amazing to begin with. Right now, for the entire month of January, you can get this pattern, which includes the wallet, the wristlet, crossbody version, everything, for less than $5. The designer of Lacus is Sylvie, and she is a wonderful person. For today's version, I'm using all fabrics from J&R Edwards. These are available on pre-order. I am also using some hardware, my zipper tape and zipper pull from Altelia Fiber Arts. I'm going to have a tag from Heartwood and Hyde, and then a woven tag from Sewing Blurbs. And I'm using this magnet. My friend gave it to me, so I don't know the shop where this came from. My fabrics are a cotton woven, so everything has a layer of SF101 on it. But for the flap, I'm going to do a little bit of quilting on it, so I did add a layer of fleece. Let's talk a little bit about the changes I'm going to make on this pattern. The main thing I'm going to do is going to be regarding the flap. I'm going to make it a very decorative focal piece. What I'm going to do first is I have the exterior, then a layer of fleece, and then I have the lining. I'm going to have this sandwiched together, and I'm going to quilt it. That means I won't have the option of following the pattern where you sew the exterior and the lining right sides together. I'm going to add a row of binding all around. Since I'm going to be binding the edges instead of sewing it right sides together and turning it out, I'm going to have to remove this seam allowance that is included in that pattern piece. Another thing I'm going to be doing differently is I'm only going to be using one zipper tab on my zipper, and I'll be folding these ends under 90 degrees. I'm also not going to add a D-ring or anything onto my wallet version. You could if you wanted to, but I'm just want to make sure that I'm using a zipper pull that has an option for me to hook in a wristlet strap if I want to be able to carry this as a wristlet. I think everything else is basically staying the same on how I'm doing this pattern, so I'll come back once I have my flap quilted. I have the quilting done on the flap. I don't think it looks horrible. The back's super cute. I actually like this back better than I do the front. I'll just base this tag into place. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding the binding. I just cut a huge strip of binding, so I know it's too long. I'll trim it off at the end. How do you decide how wide to cut it? I know I don't want it super wide, the finished row of binding. You would think you want about 1/4 of an inch at the end showing. What I chose to do on this one is I chose to cut it at 1.5 inches. So it is 1.5 inches wide. I feel like that is the best bet. I wouldn't go any lower than 1.25 inches. I wouldn't go any wider for something this small than probably 1.75 inches. This is not cut on the bias, so it's not really stretchy at all. I might have a little bit of puckering around here at this curve. It's okay, I'm not too worried about it. Since I know that this raw edge is going to be caught in the seam allowance, I do not have to bind it. That also means I do not have to finish the edge whenever I attach it here. So I'm able to just take this binding strip, place it right sides together, matching up that raw edge there at the top, and then I can start sewing. I'm going to sew this around with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. If you've watched my other marathons before, you know that I typically give just fun facts while I'm sewing, and so I wanted to do the same thing for this one. The thing is though, is Sylvie is someone who is very dear to me, so I wanted to make for sure that I gave facts that were just as wonderful as she is. So I kind of was struggling with finding the perfect facts, and then I decided, why wouldn't I just give facts about friendship? Because Sylvie is an amazing friend, she's an amazing person, and so during this video, let's just highlight the wonderful things about friends. According to research, 61% of people say that having a friend or a really healthy friendship is one of the most important things in their life, and it is essential to living a fulfilling life. This is over both marriage and money. They rank friends higher than both of those things. When I'm coming around to this curve, since I didn't cut this on the bias, I'm going to have, like I said, a little bit of bunching. Don't worry about it so much now. When we fold it down, we'll make sure it looks really good. Just try to make sure you keep it in line is the main thing. Just over half, 53% of people surveyed said they have 3 to 4 close friends. Over half of people surveyed, 53% to be exact, say they have between 1 to 4 very close friends. 38% said they have 5 or more close friends. Only 3% of people say they have no close friends at all. 72% of the people surveyed said they are content with both the amount of friends they have and the quality of the friendships that they have. People that report having a large group of friendships say that they are more content in their life. Research found that the higher amount of friends you say you have, the higher the quality of life you say you have. What I'm doing now is I'm simply flipping this binding over to the lining side. I always sew my binding right sides together with the exterior. That's the pretty side, that's the side that's going to be most noticed. So that's what's most important to me. Now that I have it all flipped over, all I do is I kind of fold it in half. So I'm going to tuck that raw edge up against the edge of the flap, and I'm going to fold it over. If it fits perfectly, I'm good to go and I don't have to do anything else. Mine does, so I'm good. If it didn't fit perfectly, what I could do was I can make this fold bigger, like this, or smaller. But the main thing you want is you want this folded edge to match exactly where you just sewed. If you do that, when you come back in with that same seam allowance, which for me is 1/4 of an inch, you're going to catch perfectly this edge here, but then you'll also be able to stitch perfectly on this side. It's a really good technique to do. I learned it when I was first getting into sewing and binding, and I've never switched. Other people have different ways they prefer to bind. That's great. Whatever works best for you. There's a lot of different ways to bind a bag, or even just like me, just a flap. I'm going to continue clipping this around. Whenever I teach binding in person, if you are someone that's new to binding, I will suggest you take a pin, poke it through that edge there, so you just push all the way through, and you come back to the back side to make for sure as to where it's coming out. This guarantees that you are getting an accurate stitch. It's folded evenly on both sides, and that when you sew it, it'll come through properly. Also, I tell my students to, once they have it all clipped, to kind of look down, kind of the barrel of it, but to make sure there's an even amount that they can see it on both sides. So now that we know that people love having their friends and how many they have, what's the thing most friendships talk about? Work, family, and current events. The Surgeon General has actually released a statement saying that if you have loneliness in your life, if you're someone that is going through a period where you're experiencing loneliness on a long-term basis, it can actually lead to premature death. It is a risk factor for premature death, and it's comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So the more research they're doing in this, the more they're realizing that connection with other people in your life is pivotal. Loneliness can make changes to your cardiovascular system, your immune system, how you sleep, your cognitive health. We think of having friends as just a lovely thing to have, but it actually, according to new studies, can be a life or death situation. 40% of people surveyed say that their friends don't live close to them. They're not local. They don't live in either the same city, the same state, or even the same country. Even knowing this though, studies have shown that the amount of people that meet friends online is lower than they expected. Studies show that only 6% of people actually meet their friends online. What they found is that most people met their friends at school, work, and meeting through other people, so being introduced by others. It's just that throughout life, people move away, or you meet people at events and they relocate. In your lifetime, you're expected to make about 396 different friends, but only 1 out of every 12 of those actually lasts and becomes a permanent friend. It is scientifically proven that having healthy friendships in your life can reduce stress. So like I said, on these curves, I am having bunching. What I'm trying to do is push the bunching to the back. When I come around, I want to see a very minimal amount of bunching, and I don't care if there's a little more bunching like this right here on the back side. So let's see how it looks. If you noticed, I folded all of this looking at the lining. I didn't even look at the exterior. When I turn around, I'm going to check just to make sure everything looks good on my exterior. If you've not tried this method, and it looks perfect, not because of me, it's just the technique. If you've not tried this technique, it's called a single fold binding, and I highly recommend it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to come back to my machine and I'm going to sew around this binding with that same 1/4 inch seam allowance to connect it. According to research, it takes 40 to 60 hours from a person to move from an acquaintance to a casual friend. This is 40 to 60 hours of time together, connection, talking, conversation. It takes 80 to 100 hours from them to move from casual friends to just regular friends, but it takes over 200 hours for someone to become a truly close friend. This is all according to research, so document those interactions so that you can start demanding more of your friends. The older we get, the harder it is for us to make friends. This starts in around our 30s. We struggle with trusting people. We struggle with finding the time. We're usually in our 30s. We're involved with our families or our careers. And so this is why it's important for us to work better at maintenance. This is according to social scientists, because it is easier to maintain a friendship once you have that connection than to go out and meet someone new and develop an actual close friendship with someone instead of just maintaining the ones you have. Studies show that by the time you're in your mid-30s, the amount of people you trust decreases by 1/3. Higher emotional intelligence is linked to more emoji use with friends, while avoidant attachment is associated with less emoji use with friends. So bizarre. Okay, I have that bound all the way around. You can see the stitches here are pretty in line. We have that bunching like I explained I would have on the bottom. Since I did not cut this on the bias, I made sure it looked great on this front. Next thing I need to do is I need to add a tag here at the bottom. So what I'll do is I'll take my tag, I want to place it upside down because I'll be looking at it from the bottom. And I want to make sure that it doesn't get caught in my seam. I'm going to center it on here, and then I'll add just a little bit of glue to hold it in place while I stitch around. Of course, if you're someone who doesn't like to use glue like I do, you could use a piece of double-sided tape. I'm just going to do a back stitch instead of pulling my threads to the back on this tag, since you will be able to see it from either side. I feel like just the back stitch will look a little neater. Studies have shown that people in Canada are people that suffer from the most loneliness as a group. Studies also show that men tend to value friends more important than family than women do. Women place a higher value on family before friends, which I didn't expect that. Animals also have best friends, and as a matter of fact, they even develop friendships outside of their species. People over the age of 70 that have close friendships tend to live 22% longer than people who don't. The last thing I'm going to need to do to this flap before I attach it to the bag is I need to attach this magnet. So I'm going to go off camera. I'm going to use my hole puncher to punch out the holes, and then I'm going to install this magnet on there by screwing this bottom part into the top part, and it'll be going through both layers. I got the magnet installed on my flap. Everything is done. It looks great. I love it so much. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this aside. I'm going to work on my front pocket. I'm going to work on my zipper. So for my zipper, I folded down the ends 90 degrees, and then I added a zipper tab onto one end. I added the pull onto it. So for the zipper tab, I just took the zipper pattern piece that is in the pattern, made a 4-way fold, and slipped it on. I'm just going to sew across that edge. For this front pocket piece, I use my pattern piece to find the placement for this magnetic snap. Now I'm just going to fold that together against those short edges, and I'm going to sew along these edges. I'll leave the sides open so that I can turn this slip pocket right sides out. Close friends share about 1% of their DNA with each other, so that's the equivalent of being like a fourth cousin with your best friend. More than a third of the population in the United States says that they envy their friend's lifestyle. If your best friend has a healthy diet, a healthy eating lifestyle, chances are you will too. What's the difference between a true best friend or just a casual acquaintance? Behavioral scientists and psychologists describe a close friendship as a relationship that involves a long-lasting bond of sacrifice and shared moments. That is the exact definition. A true friend prioritizes your happiness and never asks you to put your friendship before your principles, and you miss them when you're not with them. After you have this slip pocket piece, or the front pocket turned right sides out, I'm going to go ahead and finger press that seam, and then I'm just going to roll it so that I'm having it flush with the bottom. That's going to be the bottom of this pocket. We want the magnet a little closer to the bottom. Add some clips there just to kind of help. And if yours looks as wrinkly as mine does, you maybe would want to take it over to the heat press to iron it. I'm not going to though. I'm going to be lazy. I'm just going to top stitch across the top there. Research shows that people look more attractive when they are in a group. This is called hierarchical. I can't say this. Hierarchical. I'm sorry. Okay, there's a word for this, but I can't say it, and I should leave in the outtakes of how long it took me to try to say it. I'm going to flash it up on the screen as to what it's called, but the common phrase for it, because I can't say the real word, is called the cheerleading effect. So science has researched this and looked into it, but basically what happens is when you're in a group, the more attractive people in a group serve to raise the average of the rest of the group, so everybody just appears hotter. I guess what it's saying is that if you are of average looks, make sure your friends are hotter than you and you guys hang out a lot together. I don't know. So now what I'm doing is I'm just taking that front pocket and I'm adding it onto my front exterior. Pattern tells you how far to measure up from this bottom cutout part here. I'm just going to sew the sides and across the bottom and then back up the other side to attach it. Blood pressure reactivity is lower when people talk to a supportive friend instead of a friend or person who they feel ambivalent about. People who have a close friend by their side when completing a tough task have a lower heart rate compared to when they're completing a task alone. Studies have found that friends are able to predict each other's actions over time. So they can predict a friend's actions to a video clip or to a movie or things like that. And so not only can friends predict each other's, but science is now finding that they can look at strangers' brain patterns and reactions to predict whose friendships can last long term. So this is how my little slip pocket looks. Super cute. That's the front. It's done. Let's pull out that back piece. And what we're going to do is we are going to center my flap. I'm going to have it right sides up. My exterior is right sides up. I'm just centering it there along the bottom, matching up that bottom edge. And what you're going to do now is you're going to sew directly on this line of top stitching. So what I'm doing is lining everything up. The pattern tells you how far down from the top you're going to skip sewing. You're not going to sew it. So you're not attaching this flap all the way to this top edge because we need to be able to pull this down to sew the zipper onto this top. So your flap should be free and not attached at the main top. Research shows that when someone meets a stranger, someone they don't know, just a new person, they will prefer to have a deep conversation with them instead of just shallow talk about the weather and things. So in a chance to see if they can connect more and go ahead and establish a deeper bond. I'm sewing across the bottom too instead of just the sides, just to go ahead and secure everything in place. And I'm going to come back up that other side and then stop around at the same measurement that the pattern gives us. Social interactions that are positive amongst women actually help boost their serotonin, which can help lead to more positive behavior and overall improved health. 42% of Americans say they are not as close to their friends as they would like to be. Just to double check, your flap should be able to fold down from this top edge here. So now it's time to add the zipper tab. I never did sew that. I got too busy with my random facts. Let me sew this on and just trim it down really quick, and then we're going to add everything together. At this point, it's just a basic pouch you're sewing together. Shouldn't be too tricky. We do have a little bit of boxing of corners, but we're almost done. If you have a preferred way that you like your zipper to close, go ahead and orientate your zipper that way, and then you're going to flip it down right sides together onto that front. You're going to make sure that your zipper is centered onto this front exterior piece, and definitely make sure that it is not in the seam allowance. You should be able to sew on both sides without catching this zipper in your seam allowance. I'm just going to baste it in place, but you don't have to do this. You could just do a traditional zipper sandwich if you want to. So this is how that front piece looks. Let me go ahead and grab one of my lining pieces. Oh, and I did add a layer of Thermolan to the back of this. The reason why is because my flap where I have all this quilting is so strong and sturdy that I was afraid it would really just kind of flop this pouch over and it wouldn't lay right. If I didn't have my flap this structured, I probably would have just left it being a cotton woven with interfacing of SF101 or something equivalent. So now I have the lining and exterior pieces right sides together. I'm going to sew across this zipper only with the full seam allowance in the pattern. You will probably have to move your zipper pull once you get close to it. Once you get to this point, go ahead and put your exterior and your lining wrong sides together. And I only top stitch along the zipper. I don't go from edge to edge. So here is the front, this is the exterior, this is my lining. What I'm going to do is I'm going to repeat those same steps to add the back to this piece of the zipper tape. Just remember, when you do that, you're going to be attaching it like this to this edge without the flap on it. So here's how everything looks from the exterior. I'm going to do a quick check to make sure my flap snaps up nicely. That magnet looks great. I'm good with that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to tuck this flap into that magnetic pocket there just to kind of help it stay out of the way. And then I'm going to force these pieces together. It's going to be a tight fit just because all that quilting on mine does lend my flap to be kind of a thicker version of it. I'm going to use these bigger clips since I have a lot going on my exterior to clip all around here. I'm going to clip my lining pieces together. Everything's being clipped right sides together. So exterior's right sides, lining's right sides. And what we're going to do now is just sew down the sides. So we'll start at one side, go all the way down. So start the lining. And for the lining, I'll take just a slightly bigger seam allowance than I will at the exterior. Definitely making sure whenever I go across this zipper tape that I do not catch it in my seam allowance. So I'll sew down both the sides the same way. On the bottom, I'm going to sew on the bottom of the exterior, I'll sew all the way across. On the bottom of the lining, I'm going to leave my opening for turning. I'm going to let my zipper teeth kind of fold towards the lining side, and then I should be able to, whenever I get up here to it, put those seams together on the exterior and push them together. Let me go ahead and put a clip there just to keep that in line. Make it a little bit easier on myself. Same thing over here. There we go. So I will go slow just because I have a little bit of extra bulk here and there. No big deal, though. I don't think I'll have a problem. Scientists estimate that you can only have and maintain relationships with 150 to 200 people at the most. This isn't saying it's like your close best friend type relationships. It's just saying casual acquaintances that you check in on occasionally, because there's no way you could have more than that. You just wouldn't have the time to connect or have any type of relationship with them. On average, most people have 3 to 5 close friends, 10 to 15 people in their inner circle, and then 100 to 150 acquaintances. Healthy social connections are linked to a lower blood pressure, lower BMI, less inflammation, and a reduced risk of diabetes. This is across all ages, not just one age group. Feelings of loneliness and rejection trigger the same feelings in the brain as physical pain. Having healthy friendships actually lowers your risk of catching the common cold. Okay, here at the bottom is where I'm going to leave that opening. So I'm going to sew a little bit on both sides, locking in those stitches. But since I have a pretty big amount of bulk in that exterior, I'm going to leave a bigger opening than I typically would. Now your corners here at the bottom are very small, so you can see I'm just grabbing up here at the sides and pulling them. I'm going to nest, so I'll have one seam going one way, the other going the other way. Add a clip there, and then you're just going to sew across with the seam lines in the pattern. Don't worry too much about getting this step like, oh, everything's not lining up perfectly. Where it's so small, it's just giving you a little extra depth. Nothing too important there. So you're going to do that on all 4 sides. And then you are going to trim up your seam allowances, and we will turn it right sides out slowly, or I will do it slowly in that opening in the lining. Our last steps will be to close up the lining and then press everything flat. So I'm going to go off camera and finish boxing my corners, turning everything out, closing up the opening, the lining, and when I come back I'll have everything completed and we'll look at this wallet, talk about it, and we'll end this video so you can get on to the rest of the videos in this marathon. My Alice wallet is completely done. This is adorable. It is super cute. Here's the back with the tag. Here is the front flap magnet. There is the woven tag on it. I lift up my snap. Here is that little front pocket, perfect for a driver's license, credit card. Here is a slip pocket in the back. Open it up. Got a thread to trim there. It's super cute inside. Perfect for everything you need. I love this so much. It's a little loud. It's a little eccentric for sure. Let me zip it closed again, but it's perfect. It's just kind of quirky. I love it. I love it. I love it. The fleece does make it a little thick. Last time I made this, I kept it out of the seam allowance. Was a little lazy this time. It still works. Just keep that in mind. If you have a domestic, it will be hard for you to have that fleece in there. So thank you so much for watching the first marathon for 2025. This is from Lacus. I will have a link to the fabric and to the pattern in my description. The fabrics are all from Jane R. Edwards, and my zipper tape and zipper pull is from Altelia Fiber Arts. So I felt like it was so fitting for me to give facts about friendship while sewing up this pattern because Sylvie has been such a huge support to me. She is a wonderful, kind person, a human. I just love her so much. So during this video, I talked all the benefits about having friends and close relationships. So I took the time to look up some ways to even have more friends. So here are some tips that science says will give you more friends. Be genuinely kind, be confident, have a pleasant attitude, speak the truth, be a good listener, work on your own personal growth, support your friends, be authentic, and the very last one, avoid gossip. But if you're one of my friends, we won't talk about that one. We'll keep that just between us. Thank you so much for watching another video of mine. I really appreciate it. And I hope today in your sewing room that you just take the time to stop what you're doing and be a friend, connect with someone, have a nice conversation, share a laugh, or whatever you like to do to feel connected to others in your community. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. I hope you watch all the other tutorials in the marathon today. And thank you, Sylvie, for allowing us to sew up your pattern.